Hey folks, welcome to the webinar where we're going to be discussing proven OT deployments that strengthen your overall cybersecurity posture. We're just going to give it another minute or two for a few more folks to join. Then we'll just dive right into the content. So everyone hang tight for about 2 minutes and we'll get started. All right, everyone, we're about 2 past the top of the hour here. So with that, we're going to dive in. You've joined the proven OT deployments that strengthen your OT cybersecurity posture. My name is Pete Lund. I'm VP of Products here at OPSWAT. Joining me is Matt Wiseman. He leads up product management for our removable security business. And with that, we're going to jump right into our packed agenda, which is really going to talk about a number of different things. Really introductions, which we've covered. Common OT cybersecurity challenges, so the challenges that our customers are bringing to us on a daily basis. Some of the myths that we're hearing, myths and some FUD around what is okay and not okay when it comes to OT cybersecurity. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, the cybersecurity maturity model that we see a lot of our customers adopting and where folks fall in it. Then we'll go into some details on deployment use cases and case studies. So some real world examples of how we're helping our customers mature and secure their organizations. And then a very brief overview of our OPSWAT solution portfolio for cybersecurity. So with that, we're going to dive in and turn it over to Matt to talk about some of the common OT cybersecurity challenges.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Pete, and welcome everyone. We're thrilled to have you with us here today. So I wanted to kick off this webinar by really going through what some of the common challenges are that we hear from customers on a daily basis. Right? Whether you're in the aerospace industry, you may be from defense, pulp and paper, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing. There tends to be some common trends that everyone is dealing with. And it's nice to take those different challenges and everything that we hear on a daily basis and try and summarize it here to share some best practices and some different insights on how you can improve your own cybersecurity posture. So it depends on where you are in the world, but compliance requirements are definitely something that I hear more and more. If not every day, multiple times a day from different users. So this could be NERC-CIP for energy within the United States or North America. ANSI is a big requirement throughout France. There's, again, countless different compliance regulations around the world, but it's nice to see how these are evolving and helping to improve different industry security posture around the world. So if you have any questions about different compliance in your area, please feel free to reach out to us and we can help you with some specifics. We've also seen a growing trend here around supply chain protection. So this is a neat one where there's kind of two sides to this, right? There's the software supply chain of, hey, is this patch safe? Is this update safe? Where did this come from? Is this from a trusted vendor? How do I know how this ended up in my facility? There's also the other side of, where did this hardware come from? Do I know that this came from my vendor? It hasn't been tampered with and it is safe? And these are questions that we're helping our customers with on a daily basis, looking at country of origin for where this device or patch may have come from. And it really is a growing area of conversation. The overall theme of removable media security is one that's close to my heart. There's definitely concerns of, having that air gap and thinking that it's a great security plan, which it can be. But we need to be sure that any devices that are brought in and breach that air gap, that they have been scanned, they are safe, and that they're able to enhance your operations instead of cause some type of unplanned outage or downtime. Trying to understand what assets you have. It's pretty easy to say, everything's safe and it's secure. But if we don't know really what assets are there, what's active, and have some type of continuous scanning to find out what's on your network, it's really hard to have that solid vision and map and be assured of where everything is on a regular basis. Data loss prevention is a really big topic as well. This is growing in the world of OT. The idea of DLP being only in IT is definitely changing. There's a lot of sensitive data, and we want to be sure that it stays where it needs to be and is not in the hands of anyone else. So there's lots of questions around, how do we make sure if it's through USB or some type of secure file share? How do we know what's going in and coming out of our environment? how are we securely updating our OT assets? Right. This also, builds off of the supply chain protection. But how do we get patches in? How do we get them out? How do we line up our downtime to ensure that we're applying updates when needed and not in an emergency manner? There's a growing concern around different country policies. Recently in the US, we've had a couple different executive orders trying to improve the nation's cybersecurity, and we're seeing this all around the world. So it is nice to see more of a highlight around cybersecurity and trying to improve our critical infrastructure systems around the world. But with that comes a lot of questions, concerns, and how do we actually make decisions around this to improve our overall posture? Malware analysis is for those maybe more mature customers or users who are trying to have greater insight to what is in their environment. If you find something, where did it come from? What was the potential intention there? And to try and have that idea of potential impact as well. Lastly, definitely segmentation is always a big topic and point of concern for different users, trying to figure out how to separate those valuable assets to keep them secure from the outside world. These are all different challenges that, regardless of industry, we're seeing questions and comments every day. So we're hoping to help you with a lot of these different topics in the webinar today. So along with all of these challenges, there's also a lot of myths in OT cybersecurity. These are things that, again, I hear on a daily basis, and I wanted to debunk these before we go into some of our different deployments and try and share these best practices. So maybe the most common thing that I've heard is, I have endpoint and antivirus. That'll protect me from all inbound threats. Well, when was the last time you updated this antivirus? Was that an update on a single asset within your protected network, or did you update all of your antivirus engines? Right? Is it a single antivirus engine? Are you potentially missing something that you could have if you had more than one engine in place? So again, AV is a great tool. I don't discredit it at all. It's a great step in a defense in-depth strategy. But relying solely on endpoint antivirus, that probably has been forgotten about at some point, and maybe out of date, is something that we should not do, and we should be using that to complement our overall cybersecurity program. I also hear a lot about homemade scanning stations. Oh yeah, for all USBs that are brought in, we scan them on this laptop that's been sitting over here in the corner for years. Again, it's great that you're doing something and that you have steps in place to try and ensure that your environment is as secure as possible. But how are you enforcing those scans? If you're not at site that day, are people listening to this? Do you have a written formal policy? Do you have technology in place to enforce the scan if someone happens to forget? There's a lot of things we need to think about when we're building a really robust security plan for our operational environment. A lot of people think, hey, everything's air-gapped, it's safe. Everything should be fine. Well, is there any type of backdoor installed so that somebody could access the environment remotely so they can perform an update if they had to work from home? Was that in place through the pandemic? Has it been taken out? There's a lot of things we need to be aware of to ensure that our environment is as safe as possible. And lastly, here's around asset visibility tools. There seems to be a bit of a negative conception that, it could impact my operational environment. And if it's actively pinging, it could slow things down. It could impact the overall production. And that's really not true as long as you have the right tool configured in the right way for your environment. So it's always good to debunk some of these myths that seem to be growing and changing the more that I talk to different users. But I wanted to ensure that you had a clear view on all of this before we go into our different deployments.
Those
now
are some
I'll
great
things back to Pete.
Some great points there, Matt. I really like the air gap one because certainly we talk to a lot of customers who have air gaps, but as we know, air gaps are only as good as how they're maintained and monitored. And just saying I have an air gap and not checking on it is a bad way. So with that, let's jump into what I like to call the ARC cybersecurity model. This is something we borrowed from the folks at ARC. We were down attending their conference a few months ago, and I think it does a really good job of summarizing where people either are and need to go. So we kind of find customers that fall into a number of different buckets here on this chart. Lots who are just kind of beginning their cybersecurity journey in the identify stage, where you're really starting to understand which assets you have, what protections do you have in place, and where are my crown jewels, and what are the attack paths and surfaces that are going to be most problematic if attacked or leveraged. And then we kind of have the other end of the spectrum where we're dealing with Fortune 500, say, customers who have robust security plans, robust teams, and multiple tools. And they're trying to figure out how they can, integrate with SIEMs and SOARs and work on respond and recovery plans. Certainly lots of availability impacts, and business at risks. And what we like to do at OPSWAT is first, conversationally with the customer, determine, where are you realistically in your maturity model, and what can we do to help step you up to that next phase, right? If you've maybe deployed a visibility solution and you've started to put in some segmentation, but you haven't, tackled anything around remote access or tackled anything around, your homegrown removable media scanner, which is always out of date and broken. Those are really those steps that we like to help customers through and ultimately get customers more protected, but also more mature when it comes to things like responding to a cybersecurity policy or a policy inquiry from a customer. Oftentimes we're seeing now customers coming to them with strong security requirements when it comes to supply chain and country of origin, and they need tools internally to actually prove to their customers how they're actually doing that. So a great chart to reference, some fantastic content on the ARC website around, what a mature model looks like, different solutions that can be used to get there, and techniques and strategies. So with that, we're going to kind of move into some of the deployment and use case studies that very much are being used by our customers in the market today. So the first one, kind of building on that core step of, asset visibility. And really, asset visibility is one of those starting points where, you've got that classic adage, you cannot protect what you can't see. And certainly visibility on its own is good, but visibility on its own also doesn't really provide robust protection, right? A really good visibility solution is going to show you all your assets and all your threats, and it's going to do, a really good job of showing you what the bad guys are up to or what some of your end users are doing from an insider threat or just plain old misconfiguration standpoint. But it's actually not going to do much to stop the bad guys. So here, our customers actually like to deploy our visibility solution, which is Neuralizer, and at the same time, an intrusion prevention system, which is actually OT Fuse. So this is like very much a plug and play industrial firewall, if you will, to actually stop and block bad communications coming from places they shouldn't be. So very easy to use and set up. Sits between an HMI and a PLC. Has a learning mode where you can learn what the normal communication set is, and then you can actually put in parameters where don't allow configuration time of day changes. So if it's during a work shift, or if for some reason someone plugs into, an open switch port and starts, sending Modbus commands to PLCs, OT Fuse will notice that and block it. You can also have it function in, a pass-through mode, where if you're just wanting to get alerts based on some of these threats, but it's really a great solution to build in protection down at those lowest levels of the Purdue model, which are traditionally typically hard to do, right? So it's a very small OT safe bump in the wire that you can place in there. And at the same time, using Neuralizer to give overall visibility to those operations. Also at the top, we'd like to highlight our secure remote access solution for OT. We'll talk a bit or more about that later, but that's actually a great way to manage some of that remote access and provide the visibility to it, as well as protection in case something goes wrong. So a fantastic way to actually get visibility and protection and remote access all from a common vendor. So certainly a great strategy here is to minimize the number of vendors and then the number of risks that are being introduced into your environment. So as we move on to another, key challenge, 2 slides here on how we help customers move data and information in and out of the IT/OT boundary, right? So you might be hyper segmented, you might be running a flat network, you might be, strictly following the Purdue model or the 62443 model. Regardless of that, you want to have demarcation points where it's not easy to have data and information switch between those 2 environments. So if you imagine the production team has a data historian, for example, and that historian data needs to flow into the IT network, but you want to make sure you do it safely. You want to make sure you're not going to expose that historian's SQL database or whatever data scheme it's using to the entire part of your IT operation. That's where you can put in our data diode or unidirectional security gateway, depending upon the use case, and actually will allow for the flow of information in a provable one-way direction, so that you know that no bad actors from the IT side or the cloud or wherever your operational data may be flowing to can actually come and back channel into OT. So very, very popular, meets a lot of the regulatory requirements when it comes to one-way data transfers. A lot of different ways to deploy it in a different number of configurations and hardware types, but really a fantastic, simple, easy to use setup to ultimately provide the belts and suspenders approach to firewalls and other network protection layers that you may have built in. Another, classic use case for these types of solutions is just the secure transfer of files in and out of OT. Oftentimes, the updates that need to be brought into OT are done via files. We talked a little bit around removable media security, and we'll talk more about that. But we've actually got a great way where we're actually helping some of our customers move off the use of removable media. So they actually expose, a secure web portal to their contractors and outside vendors that are coming in, even sometimes remote IT employees that need to get information into the OT side. We can actually set up a one-way transfer, not violating an air gap, such that we actually take that data, put it on a secure portal, and not just scan it one time, but actually scan it continuously with some of our vaulting technology. So this becomes a landing page where you can securely access files, upload them, download them, all being hashed and inventoried and continually scanned, not only just for threats, but we could even go as far as taking a file that's potentially been weaponized and clean it with some of our CDR technology. So some fantastic solutions here to ensure that files are only being transferred in one way, and you're having no data exfiltration or exposing yourself to any of those, SMB classic vulnerabilities where WannaCry and other things that leverage, flaws in SMB will actually kind of block and prevent all of that with, really good quality logging and security along the way. So great way to detect, 0 days with that continuous scanning. So with that, we're going to shift gears, and Matt will talk a bit about our removable media use cases.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete. So this use case is one that definitely stands out a lot to me and happens to be pretty eye-opening for a lot of customers. So it's a key highlight here in the presentation. So quite frequently, I have conversations with different companies around the world, and they're asking me, hey, we're trying to make sure that all USB or any type of storage media, right? It could be CDs, DVDs, SD cards, all the way back to floppy disks. How do we ensure that anything that's coming into our air gap or our closed off environment is safe? We've tried to use a homemade scanning station, but it's very very manual, very time consuming. How can we do this? I've heard from many that it takes over 500 hours annually for an employee to sit down and manage this, update this system. Their detection rates might not be great, using one, if not maybe two antivirus engines. And then on the reporting and management side, it's really hard to get a strong vision of, what was scanned when, anything that was potentially malicious detected. It's tough when you have these ad hoc kind of, spur of the moment cybersecurity models. So that's on the USB side of things. Then we have others that say, oh yeah, we scan all USB devices. We're very, very keen on that, and that's great. But all of our contractors who visit the site, whether they're collecting diagnostics, performing updates or maintenance on some of the production equipment, they walk straight in with a laptop, and I have to sit down and say, wait, that's a massive vulnerability, right? They said, no, we're scanning the USB. I said, no, but what about the laptop itself, right? There could be anything on that hard drive, and you're bringing it straight in and plugging it into your production equipment. So it's quite often an eye-opening conversation. So what we're able to do here is using our MetaDefender kiosk, we can scan any of those removable media devices with well over 30 different antivirus engines, looking for any type of malware. Again, everything from USB all the way back to floppy. And thankfully, we have a very similar technology in our MetaDefender drive to scan any of those contractor laptops. So when we think of removable media, we also need to think of those transient cyber assets, or those inbound laptops to ensure that we're able to scan, strip out any type of malware that may be there, and ensure that we have that quality management and reporting. So when the board comes calling and asks, hey, what are we doing for this? When senior management comes by and says, hey, do you have any type of reports on what we're doing for USB security to check assets? You have that nice dashboard, that nice view, and it really does provide great peace of mind for the team at site to ensure that everything will continue to run and there is no unplanned downtime. So jumping to this next use case, it's a very similar but a little bit more robust. So frequently I hear about the knowledge gap within OT, the challenges of, hey, so-and-so's leaving, we can't find people to fill those spots. And it leaves a lot of burden, right? Sometimes the OT cyberspace can be managed under the IT group. It could be under the engineering group. And some of these OT cybersecurity initiatives can be forgotten or really difficult to find someone to manage. So here we're thankfully able to provide a very robust solution that actually has automatic updates for all the kiosks. Everything is reported up in a nice central dashboard. And whether you have a big knowledgeable team on site to manage these devices or not, we can have that all done for you, which is great. So all the latest updates for the DAP files are always applied. You know that you have the latest knowledge and input on any of those known threats or viruses. And then you have different technologies like deep CDR to go in and strip out some of those unknown threats as well. So it's a great balance of building a very secure model without the large management. So if you look on the second part of this slide here in the secured network, we actually have something that goes a step further than what I showed previously to give you that enforcement layer, which is really nice. So I always tell customers it's great to have a written cybersecurity policy. If you have documentation around all USB media must be scanned, must be documented, that's great. But what do you have to technically enforce that scan? Right? Sure, if it's written down, it's wonderful. You're being very formal. It's a set rule. That's great. But if someone happens to forget, right? If you have that moment, it slips your mind, you walk straight in and start plugging things into the production network. How are we sure that that you're safe and protected? So here with our OPSWAT client and MetaDefender firewall, we're actually able to catch those unscanned media devices, ensure that they have been checked by a kiosk, they are safe to be used. Anything that is unscanned will be unable to mount on that asset, and you'll have to return back to the kiosk and ensure that it's scanned. So it's nice to have that true peace of mind. If you're not at site that day, you know that people are still following and they're still complying with your USB security policy. So it's nice to have not only a formal security program, but enforceable technology that can put you at ease. Up next, we really do have a best-in-class security solution. So I've seen this as a new best practice plan from a number of different manufacturers, and a lot of those users that have very large physical sites. It's nice to be able to incorporate your cybersecurity plan in with your operational plan. So here we've actually got the kiosk integrated with Active Directory. So when there's a visitor that shows up to site, if it's an employee, right, you can sync in with Active Directory, you know who's completing a scan and when it's happened. If you're a visitor, you can enter your site contact, have some of that information there, and then actually have an email go out to that individual to let them know, so-and-so has arrived from this organization. They'd like to perform an update on this asset, and you have all that information readily available to you. You can go meet them at the entrance. So it does help to not only help your organization to become more secure, but it improves your operational efficiency as well, which is a great bonus. You can see some similarities here to something that Pete showed earlier, where you have, instead of the vault-to-vault transfer through NetWall, we actually have kiosk through NetWall to vault. And the beauty here is that you can leave all outside or external USB devices at the guard desk, or have them banned from the inside of the facility, so then any of those unknown USB devices aren't being brought in. Only those needed files are scanned, checked, and sent through NetWall into the production area. They can be picked up through our vault, and you're off and running to go about your day as needed with no unknown or untrusted devices entering that production network, which is great. You've got the same level of enforcement here that we showed previously with the client and firewall. So it truly is a best-in-class solution. The nice thing here, again, touching on the challenge of DLP, is that we have NetWalls going in the opposite direction. So if the contractor or visitor needs to pick up logs or some type of diagnostics to look at later, there's actually an approval system to send out those logs with a unique identifier code, so they can insert their USB back at the kiosk outside of the outside of the production zone and pick up those logs. So they aren't plugging in any unknown devices into your production equipment. This truly is a best-in-class solution that can help many, not only with the visitor management side and operational efficiency, but to truly have a top-of-class USB and any type of media security program in place throughout your organization.
Thank you, Matt. Sounds like some fantastic ways to help organizations of all sizes and maturity levels, either start their journey with removable media security or, get it more operationally efficient or just cover some of those more advanced use cases. So with that, we're going to switch to more of the network security protections around secure remote access. So one of my favorite topics has been the ongoing saga with Old Smart Water. So originally thought to be compromised via, we'll say traditional off-the-shelf remote access. But as it turns out, it actually was, just simple confusion around who was accessing the system there. So more of a user error and internal confusion. And we certainly spent a lot of time and money as a nation trying to figure that out, where had they had a very nice, easy to use enterprise grade secure remote access system in place, they'd simply be able to look at the logs and the access patterns of what had happened and quickly get to that answer. So of course, things like COVID and other remote work trends and really just getting the operator outside of the environment, out of harm's way, is another great benefit to having good, reliable remote access to your OT environment. But the trouble with it is folks are putting in things like VPNs, which don't have the right amount of granularity, or IT tools that don't have really an understanding of the OT environment. They're not able to protect at the granular OT protocol level. They're not able to understand, per user, per device type granularity. And really, you have to open yourself up to firewalls and ultimately VPNs, where a good secure remote access solution is an outbound tunnel, more of a handshake, more only use when needed. This is something that can also help you satisfy the logging and enforcement needed when it comes to your regulatory standards. So you can get a session log and actually break those sessions when either an employee or a contractor is actually doing things that shouldn't be allowed, attempting to access, a device that they shouldn't. Their session can be broken. You can get a log triggered and an alert ultimately sent to your SIEM or whatever platform you're using to monitor these things. And really making sure that secure remote access is done correctly is key to making sure that you remain cyber resilient as well as operationally efficient. Now at OPSWAT, we don't just focus on products. We also have a very robust service offering. So we offer many things that we kind of brand as OT services. The biggest one we talk about, folks, is SOC services. With kind of the workflow shortage that we have, not only in security, but even bigger in OT, folks need help kind of monitoring these environments. Folks need help understanding where their issues and challenges are. We offer everything from, full-time MSSP style monitoring of these environments to things like cybersecurity assessments, pen test, threat intel. All of that kind of falls under our professional services umbrella here at OPSWAT. And really the SOC offering is a fantastic way to outsource and leverage, your resources in the best way internally, right? OT operators are some of the smartest folks I've ever worked with. But they're not cybersecurity experts, right? They're experts at keeping the process running. They're expert at industrial automation, and not always are they experts at cybersecurity. So when they're presented with some of these data points, they may not have the right expertise to interpret them. So when you pull all this together, Matt will talk about what a cyber mature organization looks like using some of our OPSWAT technologies.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete. So the focus of this conversation today was really around the OT side. So focusing primarily on level 3 and below. But here at OPSWAT, we really do specialize in critical infrastructure security for all organizations, whether that be on the IT side or the OT side. So if you have questions around different secure remote access tools, email gateway security, secure storage, it could be questions about cloud security, questions about your hardware security, could be software related. We really do specialize across the board. And it is nice to have that single vendor that you can bounce different questions off of, going from IT, OT, and everything in between. So we're happy to help with any of these different inquiries that you have, and please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to help you with any questions here.
Yeah, I love the fact, Matt, that it's all centrally managed from one portal. You can see all of your IT and OT security solutions, look at updates, see issues. Just makes it much easier than managing a dozen or more different vendors to solve some of these problems. So just a bit more about OPSWAT in closing. So we've been around for quite some time, 20 plus years in the cybersecurity business. Recently kind of pivoted to that critical infrastructure protection as we see more and more threats happening. We're pushing close to 700 employees these days, 1,500 plus customers. So some tremendous core customers, household names that everyone would recognize if we were allowed to say them. A great point around certified professionals. We almost have 100,000 certified professionals, and that comes from our OPSWAT Academy training program. And that's definitely something that folks on the line should be checking out. A fantastic way to get not just certified, but understand basics about critical infrastructure, cybersecurity. We also, through our OEM products space, many vendors actually leverage some of our underlying technologies as part of their solutions. So a very comprehensive end-to-end vendor. We've won a number of awards over the years. With that, we wanted to save some time for Q&A. So thank you everyone for listening. And if we have Q&A, we'll take those now. Let me just take a look in the log here. Okay, looks like we've got one around one from Matt where he mentioned continuous scanning and one AV engine. Maybe talk a bit what is continuous scanning?
Sure. So that's a fantastic question, Pete. So the nice thing when it comes to continuous scanning is that it's not a single point in time that we're checking those files, updates, or patches that come in. Sure, it's obviously a best practice to scan those files at the point of entry, but if you're able to scan continuously in some type of file repository or a vault, you're able to get a better view of that that update or patch over time. You'll be notified if there is some type of vulnerability found. You can also prioritize that and have some type of alert to know, hey, I brought this in, it was safe, but now there's a major vulnerability. This could impact my production. This is now a priority that I need to go scan. So it's not even about finding malware all the time. It could be in, being notified of known vulnerabilities within your production network. I guess expanding upon that as well, looking at a single antivirus engine, the more AV engines that you layer together, it helps to provide a more holistic view of different threats that could be found. Even further than that is to have increased detection rates. With one engine, you're not going to have the greatest level of detection, but if you're using 30 or more antivirus engines, you can have detection levels greater than 99%. The other nice thing here is you would have different AV providers from different areas of the world. So if one organization may be at sleep, having a nap or out of the office at that time, there's probably another organization providing an AV engine from somewhere else in the world that are actively looking for new threats and adding those to their database. So the more that you can add and compile, you can find different threats from different regions, and you have that true round-the-clock updates set up for your organization.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love looking at some of the research and the AV that comes out of some of adversarial countries, if you will, right? They oftentimes get information about threats faster than you would in a NATO-based nation state, right? Because they are closer to the generation of the threat and may have emanated the threat themselves, right? But now they realize they need to peel back. Another good question, it's a question in the queue. What are some of the most frequently asked things people interested in OPSWAT? So probably the biggest one is around, probably the two biggest ones are around data diodes and removable media scanning. So we just talked a bit around scanning. Maybe we'll take the data diode one. So really it's, how does this data diode or unidirectional security gateway, how does that differ from a firewall? It looks and kind of smells like doing the same job as a firewall, right? And how is how's it different? And that's a question we get often. And when you kind of get the dig into it, it really turns into kind of a belts and suspenders approach. It certainly doesn't replace a firewall. Think about a data diode as something that physically breaks down that three-way handshake and recreates it on the other end in a clean connection. So it actually puts a physical stop in that network communication set, and it'll only allow the prescribed connections that you basically program in or threads. So if you think about, traditional firewall, those have to go through patching and change management process. Those are constantly being, updated. And oftentimes in OT, we function a bit more of a set it and forget it environment, where a data diode is something you set, and really they're difficult for attackers to get into. If you really only want to have, a syslog feed outbound, you don't have to worry about a vulnerability popping up on a diode, or its, web page being compromised, because our diodes are, locally administered only. You can turn the web page access on and off with a security dongle. So it's really a great way to harden that environment further than a traditional firewall, because those are humans are interacting with them, modifying rules in them, and vulnerabilities pop up quite often there. And then the second biggest one is maybe around removable media, and why, how does OPSWAT compare to the other solutions out there in removable media security protection? And maybe we'll give that one to Matt.
Sure. So that's definitely a great question, Pete. So I think there are a number of things that help separate us from some of the other players. We've been in the kiosk space since 2009. We're very familiar with use cases across different industries, and where we've seen great successes with many of these different organizations. The lessons learned from the many years in the space has allowed us to build different solutions for those who want the best, the biggest, and truly find those best in class solutions, or others who are just getting started on their cybersecurity journey and are looking for that easy to implement, easy to install, and easy to manage kiosk solution as well. So to have the full coverage is definitely something that is a great great benefit of working with OPSWAT. Our great number of different detection engines, with over 30 different engines available, deep CDR to strip out any of those unknown threats that you might not catch with a traditional AV engine, country of origin scanning to find out where these have come from, the benefits of DLP. I could go on and on with the different technology that's baked into our products, but it is definitely very nice to be able to find something. What I hear most from our different companies that we partner with is they like that we don't shoehorn them into using one type of solution. We can help to build a deployment that complements their operations and fits nicely into their environment. So we're happy to have conversations with anyone here today and discuss what might fit into their environment and help enable them to not only be more secure, but more efficient as well.
Awesome, Matt. Looks like we got another question around, are these proven deployments used by using OPSWAT products, or can you apply it to your own or other available products? So yes, all these kind of proven deployments that we're talking about, we're highlighting the use of OPSWAT products because we certainly love them, believe in them, but you can provide this same sort of architectural approach using a combination of OPSWAT and other products. So oftentimes we'll get into a customer environment and maybe they've made a large investment in someone else's, data diode solution. Well, no worries. We can come and ultimately provide removable media security and integrate with that solution, right? So we're not just because you've used a different vendor doesn't discredit the use of our solutions. Certainly, we prefer them because the central management and ease of use is all built in together. But these are strategies that you can use even with existing investments you've already made, right? It's just kind of the combination of solutions, part homegrown, part automated. We really like to meet customers where we are. Let's see, we've got a question around listing company names. So we can't list any company names, but we can say we've done some major work for US based utilities for removable media security, many specifically in the highest secure environments of like nuclear. We can say we've worked with large automakers and manufacturers, And certainly, if you want to have a discussion offline, we can share who some of those logos are, but not all of them are public because it's certainly customers aren't always forthcoming in who they're using for cybersecurity. But we have a number of public-facing documents that we can share here. We got a question here about good home lab applications. Certainly not an expert in setting up home labs, but I know the Click series PLCs are very affordable, easy to use. Lots of free Modbus applications out there that you can use to interact with them. Kali Linux is certainly free and always a great way to start attempting to do some hacks and compromises there. But definitely look at some of the coursework from SANS. Was a great way to look at what applications they're using, and then of course OPSWAT Academy is a great way to look at that as well. Well, I did not see any other questions in the queue, so I think we're at about time. So I think we may end it here. Thanks, folks, and certainly as a call to action, feel free to reach out to Matt or myself and anyone here at OPSWAT. Oh, we did have one more question here at the last minute. Let's see what it says. Question around OPSWAT Academy and if that knowledge is applicable to all fields of cyber. Absolutely. So we have specifically those intro level courses are very much applicable to cyber across the board. And then, of course, we have our product-centric trainings sprinkled in there as well. But the information you're learning is certainly great for understanding of critical infrastructure cybersecurity as a whole. All right, folks. Well, that wraps up. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you very much for joining, everyone.